Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. You're watching A News. Let's take a look at the top stories for the hour. Lebanon announces a partial ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, but attacks continue. Massive Russian attack on cities across Ukraine kills at least 14 people. And a gunman kills 6 people and then himself in a mass shooting in Iowa. A new US-backed arrangement may ease tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, but questions remain over how long the calm will last. Despite public commitments to stop attacks, fresh clashes on the ground highlight the fragility of the situation.
Lebanon says Hezbollah has accepted a US proposal to halt attacks on Israel in exchange for an end to Israeli strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs. Lebanese embassy in Washington says it received confirmation of Hezbollah's acceptance and that the arrangement could later be expanded to cover all Lebanese territory. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed the agreement but warned that strikes on Beirut would resume if Hezbollah continued attacking Israeli cities and civilians. He also said Israeli forces would continue planned operations in southern Lebanon. The announcement followed comments by US President Donald Trump, who said he had spoken with both Netanyahu and Hezbollah representatives and that they had agreed to stop all shooting. Despite that, clashes continued. Hezbollah said it launched 3 attacks on Israeli tanks and soldiers near 2 villages in northern Israel using drones and artillery. Earlier, Netanyahu ordered strikes on what Israel called terror targets in Beirut's southern suburbs after rocket and drone attacks by the Iran-backed group. The escalation drew sharp warnings from Iran. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the US-Iran ceasefire applies to all fronts, including Lebanon, and warned that any violation could jeopardize the broader truce. Iranian media also reported that Tehran may suspend indirect talks with Washington if Israeli military action in Lebanon continues. President Trump, meanwhile, said Israel would not send ground troops into Beirut. The United Nations expressed deep concern. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said Israeli warnings of imminent strikes had increased fear and uncertainty among civilians in Lebanon. Addressing the Security Council, UN Assistant Secretary General Martha Ama Akia Pobi said both sides were contributing to a dangerous escalation that threatens diplomatic efforts, direct talks between Lebanon and Israel, and hopes for a permanent ceasefire.
US President Donald Trump says he remains optimistic that a ceasefire agreement with Iran can be secured soon, despite signs of growing tensions. Reports suggest Tehran has suspended indirect talks with Washington and is considering a full blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking to ABC News, Trump said he expects an agreement within the next week to extend the current ceasefire and reopen the key shipping route. He said only a few issues remain unresolved and described a potential deal as better than a military victory. Iran has strongly condemned what it termed the continuous violations of the ceasefire by Israel and the US, warning against its negative consequences on regional peace and security. Tural Shureliliu reports from Tehran.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry has slammed repeated instances of ceasefire violations, which is said are committed by the United States in Iran's southern waters, as well as by Israel in Lebanon, warning over backlashes for the peace and security in the region. In a statement, the ministry recalled the ceasefire agreement reached in April, stressing that the Israel-US war with Iran shall be stopped in all fronts, including in Lebanon. It also reiterated that Iran will defend its interests wherever necessary and with all its might in accordance with the inherent right of legitimate self-defense. Also, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Monday that any violation of the ceasefire between Iran and the United States on one front, including Lebanon, would be regarded as a breach of the truce across all fronts. In a post on the social platform X, he said that the United States and Israel would bear responsibility for the consequences of any breach of the truce. Amid the fragile ceasefire, Araghchi held phone calls with his counterparts from Belgium, France, Pakistan, Qatar, and Turkey as well as Pakistani Army Chief, who is acting as the mediator between Iran and the United States. Following weeks of stalled talks, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai blamed the U.S. shifts in stance and contradictory demands for protracted negotiations. He stressed that Iran entered the talks with the U.S. out of complete lack of trust, rejecting news that Tehran and Washington have reached an agreement on an extended peace deal. Quick question, he replied that the ongoing indirect talks do not deal with Iran's civilian nuclear program, adding that the parties are focusing on ending the war at the moment. Meantime, President Masoud Pezeshkian held a phone call with the Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. According to the presidential office, their conversation focused on regional de-escalation, the safety of international shipping lanes, particularly the Strait of Hormuz, and broader economic and technical cooperation between Tehran and Tokyo. Quraish Shiralilu, reporting from downtown Tehran for A News.
A rally in Tehran has drawn attention in public support for Lebanon and Hezbollah at a sensitive moment in regional diplomacy. The demonstration came as Lebanese officials said Hezbollah had accepted a US proposal for a reciprocal halt to attacks with Israel.
Demonstrators gathered in Tehran on Monday night in support of Lebanon and Hezbollah, waving Iranian and Hezbollah flags during a rally in the capital. The gathering came as Lebanese officials said Hezbollah had accepted a US proposal for a reciprocal halt to attacks with Israel. US President Donald Trump also said he had communicated with Hezbollah through intermediaries and received a pledge that the group would not attack Israel. At the rally, some protesters said Iran had a duty to stand with Lebanon.
The Lebanese stood by the Iranians in Iran's darkest moments and supported us. You could say they brought themselves into this war, and they should be supported. In my view, every one of us has a responsibility toward them.
Because from the very beginning, we said that we stand with Lebanon, that we will not abandon Lebanon.
The rally reflected support among those gathered for Iran's regional allies, even as diplomatic efforts continued around the proposed halt in hostilities. The proposal has not ended the uncertainty around the conflict, but the rally in Tehran showed the strength of feeling among supporters of Lebanon and Hezbollah as the region waits to see whether the US-backed plan will hold.
To Ukraine now, overnight Russian missile and drone barrages have pounded major cities across the country, killing at least 14 people and injuring over 100 others. Our report brings more.
Russia launched one of its largest missile and drone attacks in recent months, striking cities across Ukraine and killing at least 13 people while injuring dozens, including children. The overnight barrage hit Kyiv, Dnipro, Kharkiv and Zaporizhia. Air raid warnings were issued across most of the country as explosions and drone activity continued through the night. In Kyiv, drones and ballistic missiles struck multiple districts. Fires broke out across the capital following the attacks, and part of a 9-story apartment building collapsed. A medical clinic was also damaged.
There was such a loud explosion and a flash that lit up everything, and immediately thick grey smoke rose up.
I think Russia does not want to end the war. It continues to terrorize Ukraine, kill our people, and destroy our buildings and civilian infrastructure. This is a crime. It is truly a crime.
Emergency crews searched through rubble for survivors as blackouts were reported in parts of Kyiv, with residents sheltering in subway stations and underground spaces during the strikes. Dnipro was among the hardest hit areas, with local authorities reporting multiple fatalities and dozens of injuries as rescue teams worked through destroyed buildings to reach those trapped. In Kharkiv, several people, including a child, were injured, while an industrial facility was struck in Zaporizhia. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched more than 650 drones and 73 missiles, including ballistic, cruise and anti-ship types, with most intercepted, though some reaching their targets. The attack came after days of heightened tension and warnings of a larger assault.
Authorities in the US state of Iowa say a domestic dispute has led to the deaths of 6 people. This comes as the suspect, who police say had a criminal record, took his own life after a confrontation with officers.
6 people were killed in the US state of Iowa on Monday following a shooting spree. Authorities say the suspect, identified as Ryan Willis McFarland, later died from a self-inflicted wound after being confronted by officers. The victims are believed to be members of his family.
The adult male suspect had left the residence prior to law enforcement's arrival, but was quickly identified as Ryan Willis McFarland, 52 years, Muscatine, Iowa. Officers located McFarland on the Riverfront Trail near the pedestrian bridge. While talking to Ryan Willis McFarland, he took his own life. Officers and EMS personnel rendered aid, however, he was pronounced deceased at the scene.
The shootings took place at multiple locations across the city of Muscatine. Authorities say the suspect had a prior criminal record. An investigation has been launched, with preliminary findings indicating the shooting stemmed from a domestic dispute.
During the initial stages of the investigation, information was developed indicating that there may be additional victims. Officers subsequently located an adult male deceased from an apparent gunshot wound inside his residence at 1509 Mill Street in Muscatine, Iowa. Officers then responded to a business located at 808 Grandview Avenue, where they discovered another male deceased from an apparent gunshot wound. The preliminary investigation indicates the shooting stemmed from a domestic dispute. At this time, all victims are believed to be family members of the deceased.
In a post on social media, Muscatine Mayor Brad Bark described the incident as tragic and offered his condolences to the family involved. Authorities say there is currently no active threat to the community.
Military officials from the United States and China met in Hawaii to discuss ways to improve safety and communication during air and maritime encounters. Mahnur Maktoum has more from Beijing.
Representatives from the Chinese and US militaries met in Hawaii from May 28 to 29 and held what the Chinese Navy described as candid and constructive exchanges on air and maritime safety. According to the Chinese side, both countries agreed that maintaining communication can help reduce misunderstandings, avoid miscalculations, and enhance professionalism during military encounters. China also stressed its firm opposition to any actions that undermine its sovereignty and safety. For its part, the US Indo-Pacific Command said that the discussions focused on reducing the risk of unsafe and unprofessional interactions between the two militaries. The meeting was held in Honolulu and brought together representatives from the People's Liberation Army and the US military. The talks followed the last month's summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Donald Trump in Beijing, where the two leaders agreed to pursue what they called a constructive relationship of strategic stability. Analysts said that the agreement could help establish clearer boundaries for managing competition and preventing crisis. The meeting also comes after the Shangri-La Dialogue Security Forum in Singapore, where US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth voiced concerns over China's military modernization while calling on Asian countries to strengthen their defense capabilities. At the same time, Hegseth noted that US-China relations are in a better state than they have been in years. Both sides agreed to continue communication through military channels, with observers viewing such exchanges as an important mechanism for maintaining stability and avoiding unintended incidents in the region. Mahnur Maktoum, A News, Beijing.
And in news from Africa, tensions have risen in central Kenya after residents challenged a proposed Ebola quarantine facility in central Kenya. The plan has sparked public anger, a court case and street demonstrations, with locals saying they fear the facility could put the community at risk.
Hundreds of people protested in Nanyuki, central Kenya on Monday, against plans to establish an Ebola quarantine facility at a nearby military base. The demonstrations brought parts of the town to a standstill, with protesters burning tyres, blocking roads and chanting "one term" as they marched through the streets. Police in anti-riot gear were deployed as tensions grew. Residents say they reject the proposed quarantine centre and do not want it placed near their community.
We are not happy with the national government and the leaders of Laikipia County, all elected leaders. There is none that has shown up for the protest, because this is a great tragedy not only for Kenya, but the whole continent of Africa.
The planned facility has been described in reports as a 50-bed quarantine centre for US citizens who may have been exposed to Ebola. Kenya's High Court has temporarily suspended the plan after legal challenges raised concerns over public health risks and consultation.
A global push to counter a deadly Ebola strain is gathering pace, with new funding aimed at speeding vaccine development as health agencies respond to an outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Global health group CEPI says it will provide roughly $60 million to Moderna and two other groups to accelerate vaccines for Ebola Bundibugyo, the strain behind an outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations chief, Richard Hatchett, says vaccine candidates could be ready for trials within a couple of months, though security conditions in eastern Congo may complicate testing. Cases have also been confirmed in Uganda. And FIFA is ramping up preparations for the 2026 World Cup, opening a major broadcast centre in Dallas that will support match coverage and operations throughout the tournament. With President Gianni Infantino present, hundreds of monitors were activated at the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Centre. The facility will serve as a home base for media from around the world, house video review operations, and operate camera feeds from all 16 venues across Mexico, Canada, and the US. Around 2,000 broadcast staff will work there during the tournament.
That happens during this World Cup until the 19th of July.
After the break, we'll discuss the latest developments involving Israel, Lebanon, Iran, and the wider regional implications. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. The Israeli Defense Forces have issued a new evacuation order for parts of southern Beirut, warning that areas allegedly used by Hezbollah could soon come under attack. This comes amid escalating regional tensions as Iran reportedly conditions any broader agreement with the US on a ceasefire in Lebanon, while also threatening to suspend peace talks entirely. At the same time, concerns are growing over maritime security after warnings of a potential total blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb, two critical routes for global energy supplies and international trade. Let's bring in our guest now. Daniela Mello, political scientist, joins us from Lisbon, Portugal. Daniela, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, as we outlined there, Israel has issued new evacuation orders for southern Beirut, while Iran is linking ceasefire conditions to negotiations with Washington. Are we now seeing diplomacy and military escalation unfolding simultaneously in real time?
I would say we have seen it throughout this entire process. The tensions between Israel, Iran, and the United States, even as this conflict started, were always present. Between the United States and Israel, even though they had the joint goal of weakening Iran, of destroying Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity, nuclear capacity altogether. It seemed fairly clear during even the early days of the conflict that someone like Bibi Netanyahu and someone like Trump actually also had some disagreements when it came to the Iran ultimate goals, and that Bibi Netanyahu was less willing to compromise with Iran to end the war and stop attacking Hezbollah. I mean, to put it mildly and clearly, Netanyahu seemed to have wanted since the beginning to enact also regime change in Iran and to be able to take the opportunity of this conflict and the weakened Iran to be able to also destroy, if possible, the proxies of Iran within the region, Hezbollah being the main threat. But as we know, there's also other groups like the Houthis. So at this juncture, it was not particularly surprising that Iran decided to use the leverage that it has in these negotiations with the United States to basically tie the hands of Bibi Netanyahu, that according to reports from Axios in the United States, had an incredibly tense conversation with President Trump yesterday, and that President Trump basically forced Bibi to retreat from Beirut and to calm down for fear that the negotiations with Iran would indeed come to a complete halt and that maybe even that the conflict would have to be resumed. This proves a number of things that as analysts we've been looking at from the outside, obviously with incomplete information, but it shows that we've been on the right track for most of the time, in that Israel and the United States have two separate strategies here, and Israel does not see it as a convenient time for the United States to completely exit the negotiations with Iran. And Bibi Netanyahu, every time those negotiations have come close to an end, has doubled down on the pressure on Hezbollah, bringing the negotiations into a point of breaking. And this time, the water almost spilled over. But as we can see, Donald Trump can still exercise quite a bit of pressure over the Israeli government to slow things down.
Okay, Daniela, Iran's also threatening a total blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb. Strategically, how serious would such a move be for the global economy?
It would be a disaster. And the Israelis know that very well. The global economy is already over immense strain. It would also be a disaster for the United States altogether, because it would be a further escalation on the conflict and a further show of force by the Iranians. And the United States might feel compelled in such a case to escalate the conflict. We have every indication, every signal from the Trump administration that Donald Trump wants a negotiated way out of this conflict, that he is, in spite of his denials, somewhat impatient to be able to conclude these negotiations and move past this impasse with Iran. A further extension of the blockades into Bab al-Mandeb and a full closure of Hormuz all over again might send the global economy into a spin, and the domestic public of Donald Trump as well, in a year of elections, we cannot forget. Because even though Donald Trump is not going into elections, his party is, and retention of the Congress is still vital for the Republican Party to be able to maintain its agenda for the next 2 years. The American public is as angry as it's ever been over Donald Trump's leadership over the economy. It's been feeling the pain in its wallet. Gas prices are at its highest point in many, many, many years, and are, of course, if the conflict deepens rather than rather than showing a path towards an exit for both parties, the global economy is going to react with an increasing prices of all goods, not just oil. But the Americans are particularly concerned with inflation, which hit almost 4% in the last quarter, and of course the skyrocketing cost of living that comes along with it. So it's bad news altogether. It's bad news for the Europeans. It's bad news for Asia. The global economy does not need this shock.
Okay, Daniela, I just want to look at Israel's situation in Lebanon once again. Israel's consistently argued that its objective is to push Hezbollah away from the border and establish a security buffer zone in southern Lebanon. If that is the case, how does the expansion of military pressure toward Beirut fit into that stated objective?
Well, it's possible. It's likely even that we are not hearing the full story from the Israeli government in terms of its objectives. Israel has very clearly wants to destroy Hezbollah, wants to destroy its capacities, and also is operating under what it sees as a time constraint imposed by the ongoing negotiations with between the United States and Iran. At the same time, another objective of this escalation, including into Beirut and beyond the initial lines determined by Bibi Netanyahu himself, has been interpreted, and certainly in the United States, we see signs that the Trump administration interprets it that way as well, as a way to slow down the negotiations itself, because Bibi Netanyahu is in a situation in which he engaged in a number of conflicts in the region, both in Gaza, within the Israeli territory, with Hezbollah, now with Iran, but he has not clearly won any of this conflict, except perhaps Gaza. But in terms of its enemies in the region, it remains pretty much in the same situation that it was before the conflict started, in which this the targets connected to Iran, are in fact now perhaps more committed to its fight against Israel than they were before this conflict started. So there's a number of security issues that Netanyahu is going to have to face for Israel, and that the Israelis understand that if at the end of this conflict they are not feeling more secure, and in fact may be more isolated and more insecure than they were before, then the threat for Israel is heightened, and Israel does not have any motivation to stop any of this targetings of Hezbollah and other groups in the region.
Okay, Daniela, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. I appreciate your time and analysis.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll take a look at key stories shaping the region. Don't go away. Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. Energy security, market diversification and regional connectivity were high on the agenda as energy ministers from D8 member states gathered in Baku for their first ever meeting. A News' Nuray Mustafa sent us this report.
For the first time, a meeting of the energy ministers of the D8 member states has been held in Baku. Speaking at the event, Azerbaijan's energy minister Parviz Shahbazov said that relying on a single energy source, route or market is no longer a reliable strategy. It was noted that geopolitical tensions, changes in energy markets, supply chain challenges and the green transition are reshaping the global energy sector. Participants highlighted the importance of diversifying energy sources and markets, as well as building new partnerships to strengthen resilience. It was also stated that Azerbaijan is working to balance energy security with the green transition while expanding cooperation in oil, gas, electricity and renewable energy. The meeting heard that the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline, TANAP and TAP have played an important role in the regional and European energy security, with cooperation now expanding through green energy corridors. Europe's accelerating green transition, uncertainty in gas markets and growing competition were also cited as key challenges for the sector. It was noted that cooperation in LNG and in petroleum product supplies has entered a new stage following the signing of a memorandum last year, while the expansion of oil pipeline infrastructure remains a promising area for future cooperation. The potential for a broader energy cooperation with Iran was also discussed. Construction is continuing on the Khudaferin and Kızılası hydropower plants with a combined capacity of 280 megawatts, while completion of the Ordubat hydropower plants remains a priority. Currently, Azerbaijan and Iran cooperate through electricity transmission lines with a capacity of 500 megawatts. Discussions are also underway on a 1,000 megawatt electricity connection between Eastern Zangezur and Nakhchivan.
Energy is one of the highest priority issues for the entire world today, and energy security, energy transition, energy connectivity, all these issues are now consuming the attention of everybody across the globe. So Azerbaijan is playing a very important role in the energy sector within the D8. And this is the D8 priority also. We have a decennial roadmap covering 2020 to 2030, and central place has been given to energy cooperation. So, and that also envisages that we should create a regular dialogue of energy ministers. So this is the first meeting, and we hope that it will further build in the coming years.
The meeting concluded with the adopting of the Baku Declaration on Energy Cooperation, which outlines future cooperation in clean energy, energy connectivity, efficient management of hydrocarbon resources, investment and technological development. Nuray Mustafa, Zohrab Shirinov for A News.
British Petroleum is eyeing Garaba oil field as a potential satellite field investment, a move that could mark a significant milestone for the industry. Our correspondent Nuray Mustafa, reporting from Baku Energy Week, brings us more from BP's regional president for Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey, Gio Christofoli.
Yeah, so with Shah Deniz, we continue to drill, so we have quite an extensive drilling program. We are also making good progress with the compression project with around 30% completion so far, so we're on track to start the compression facility by 2029, and that will give new life to Shah Deniz as a gas field. In terms of other investment, we announced yesterday the startup of the deeper gas on ACG, so NAG, non-associated gas. That is the first well of production. We're going to continue. We got another well coming up soon, and then we're going to look at data, and potentially that could lead to a multi-billion-dollar investment, all the gas underneath the ACG reservoir. We are continuing to invest in terms of Karabakh, so we got all the engineering work going on, and hopefully we're going to make a final investment decision towards mid next year and see if we can really develop Karabakh as a satellite field. That will be the first time we use existing infrastructure in the Caspian to bring new fields in, so that's a major milestone as well. And in the meantime, we continue to deploy technology to really ensure that we maximize the recovery from the ACG field, because so far we got 4.6 billion barrels of oil, and we think there is more and more to come. So we continue to deploy technology in order to maximize the recovery. Yeah.
Deal-making, investment and energy security are dominating the agenda in Baku as international companies and policymakers come together for a second day of talks on the future of energy and regional connectivity. Gulcin Kojalieva reports.
Energy security, investment and international cooperation are in focus as Baku Energy Week continues in its second day with a packed program of industry discussions and business engagement. At the Baku Expo Center, energy companies and technology providers are showcasing developments in oil and gas production, low-carbon solutions and energy infrastructure. The Caspian Oil and Gas and Caspian Power exhibitions remain key platforms for networking, deal-making and presenting technologies aimed at improving efficiency and sustainability. Thematic discussions also continue, including a panel on the Southern Gas Corridor and its role in regional energy security and supply diversification. Experts are examining the use of digital tools, automation and modern engineering in field development projects, while another session highlights the North, South and Middle Corridor routes and their growing importance for regional trade, logistics and energy connectivity.
Europe needs alternative supply, and Norway is already supplying gas at close to full capacity. The problem, of course, Europe can import more LNG, but we've seen how volatile the global market is at this time. Prices are high. There is a global shortage of LNG because of a crisis in the Middle East. So it does need to. It can't do everything. If it does remain committed to phasing out Russian gas, it needs an alternative supply, and Azerbaijan has the gas, it has the capacity to send more, it just needs the long-term commitments.
Beyond the formal sessions, the day is marked by ongoing business meetings and informal negotiations between Azerbaijan's energy institutions, international partners and major global companies active in the Caspian region. As the program progresses, attention remains on strengthening cooperation, expanding infrastructure and adapting to shifting global energy demands, with Baku reinforcing its position as a regional hub for energy policy, investment and industrial development. Gülçin Hocalayeva, Avaz Hacıyev, A News.
Turkey's intelligence chief has held talks with a senior Hamas delegation in Ankara as efforts continue to advance a fragile Gaza ceasefire and increase humanitarian aid deliveries to the Palestinian enclave. The meeting comes amid renewed fighting in Gaza and growing international concern over the future of ceasefire talks. Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkey is continuing its diplomatic engagement on the Gaza file, with its national intelligence chief, Ibrahim Kalin, holding talks in Ankara on Monday with a senior Hamas delegation. According to Turkish security sources, Kalin met Hamas Shura Council Chairman Mohammed Derwish and members of the group's political bureau to discuss the next phase of the Gaza ceasefire process. At the meeting, Hamas officials said they were complying with the ceasefire terms and briefed Kalin on what they described as Israeli violations to the agreement. The two sides also discussed Israeli military actions in Gaza during the recent Eid al-Adha holiday. Officials reviewed possible steps to prevent further truce violations, ensure implementation of commitments made in the first phase of the ceasefire, and maintain momentum in the negotiation process. Talks also focused on humanitarian assistance, including Turkish efforts in coordination with regional countries and international agencies to facilitate the delivery of badly needed aid supplies into the Gaza Strip. Monday's meeting was the latest in a series of contacts between Turkish officials and Hamas representatives as Ankara seeks to maintain its role as a mediator and guarantor in the ceasefire efforts. Turkey has repeatedly advocated a permanent ceasefire, expanded humanitarian access, and a negotiated settlement to the conflict. The discussions come at a critical time for Gaza, where ceasefire talks remain fragile and international mediators continue efforts to prevent broader regional escalation while also seeking a longer-term framework for peace and reconstruction. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has held talks with Singaporean leaders during an official visit to Singapore aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation and expanding economic ties. Fidan met Prime Minister Lawrence Wong and Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan with discussions focusing on trade, investment, defence cooperation and regional security issues. According to diplomatic sources, Fidan highlighted the importance of increasing bilateral trade and deepening investment links under the free trade agreement between the two countries, which entered into force in 2017. The foreign minister is also expected to discuss cooperation in emerging sectors, including renewable energy, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, digital technologies, and financial services. Kazakhstan says it is not in talks with the European Union over hosting migrant return centres after reports suggested the country could be part of new EU plans to process deportations outside the bloc. The issue comes as Europe moves towards stricter migration rules Fariza Kalimurzina reports from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is not holding negotiations with the European Union on hosting migrant centers for people ordered to leave the EU. This was stated by Kazakhstan's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Yerlan Zhitebayev following reports in European media suggesting that the country was being considered as one of the locations for so-called return centers. Earlier, Politico, citing an anonymous European diplomat, reported that the European Union was exploring possible cooperation with third countries to host migrants whose asylum applications had been rejected or who had been ordered to leave EU territory. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan were mentioned among the potential partners. Kazakhstan's foreign ministry says contacts with the European side do exist, but they concern a different issue. The talks are focused on easing visa rules for Kazakh citizens and are linked to a readmission agreement. Under that system, countries take back their own citizens if they are found to be staying abroad illegally. Meanwhile, the idea of moving part of the EU migration system outside the bloc is gaining political momentum in Europe. EU lawmakers have already agreed on new rules allowing member states to establish special return centers in third countries for people whose asylum applications have been rejected or who have been ordered to leave the bloc. EU officials say the initiative is needed to strengthen migration control. According to the European Commission, only around 20% of people ordered to leave the EU actually do so. This comes despite a 26% drop in irregular arrivals last year, reaching the lowest level since 2021. The new approach has already drawn criticism from human rights organizations, which warn of possible abuses and risks to human rights. However, several European countries, including the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Austria and Greece, are already exploring similar mechanisms. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Right after the break, we'll discuss Azerbaijan's evolving energy role and what it could mean for regional connectivity and global energy markets. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back to A News. We now shift our focus to a regional story for discussion. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev says the country's gas reserves are sufficient for at least another 100 years, emphasizing Azerbaijan's long-term role as both an energy producer and a strategic transit hub. Speaking at the opening of the 31st Baku Energy Forum, President Aliyev highlighted Azerbaijan's growing importance in transporting Central Asian energy resources to international markets and suggested that natural gas transit from the eastern shores of the Caspian could eventually follow the same path as oil exports already moving through Azerbaijan. Joining me now is Osama Rizvi, founder of Rizvi Insights from Lahore, Pakistan. Osama, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Now, President Aliyev says Azerbaijan's gas reserves are sufficient for at least another century. How strategically important does that make Azerbaijan in today's energy environment?
Well, a lot actually. We need to realize that we are living where fragmentation seems to be a key theme, not only in the global economy or the global politics, but also in the world energy. At the same time, we're also seeing a new emerging energy world order, about which I've written a lot as well, because we see that the hydrocarbon flows that used to go to Europe and Malaysia, Turkey, Australia and China, I'm talking about Russia here, whereas Europe has also found at least other options, and Azerbaijan is one of them. I mean, more than half of Azerbaijan's 25 billion cubic exports of gas goes to Europe. So Europe has found someone as well, Russia has found other markets, and in this divided, fragmented energy order, I think Azerbaijan, along with Turkey and this whole Central Asian region, that stands to benefit a lot moving forward.
Now, the President also said it's difficult to imagine Europe's energy market without the southern gas corridor. How central has Azerbaijan become to Europe's diversification efforts?
As I just mentioned, more than half of what Azerbaijan exports world goes to Europe. The number of countries have also increased from 13, 14 to now standing at 16. If you look at the future prospects or the recently held 12th ministerial meeting of the Southern Gas Corridor Council in Azerbaijan, it was decided that there will be an increase in gas export from Azerbaijan to European countries. All of this makes Azerbaijan a key node for one of the largest trading blocs in the world, the European Union, for the key energy supply, which is gas. Gas is also one of the resources that will be a part and parcel of the future energy mix because of its comparatively low emissions related to coal and oil. So I think it's only going to further Europe's dependence on Azerbaijan, and this whole scenario, I believe there is a win-win scenario as well, where Europe gets its gas from a rather stable region, and Azerbaijan also finds new markets as well.
Now, President Aliyev highlighted Azerbaijan's role in transporting Central Asian oil and expressed hope the same could eventually happen for natural gas. How transformative could that be regionally?
It can be very transformative, but at the same time very challenging as well. You see, especially after this recent Hormuz crisis, we have had lots of proposals. The recent pipeline between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan has the fourth largest gas reserves in the world, right? So oil pipelines and gas pipelines can crisscross the region, but at the same time, it will be of utmost importance that the regional security apparatus is strong and holds its security in challenging times that may come afterwards if the conflict does not settle down and eventually starts to spill over, unfortunately, in the wider world.
Now, Europe talks about renewable energy and long-term decarbonisation simultaneously. Osama, how does Azerbaijan balance growing hydrocarbon demand today with future energy transition pressures?
Well, we know that Azerbaijan has been really vocal about its support for renewable energy. COP29 was held in Baku, and it was a finance COP. It talked about how more funding can be generated. Azerbaijan also played a very important role in that. We also know that Iran is also working with many other companies and countries as well on the front of renewables, adding I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they want to double their electricity generation from renewables coming 2030 or 2035. So in that way, Azerbaijan is very serious about this. Azerbaijan also has a lot of land. They have good geography or topography as well that can complement the production and of renewable energy flows. But at the same time, very important to realize, forward, we will always have an energy basket approach. So no country is going to shun the traditional, conventional or fossil fuel resources. It's going to be an energy basket approach, and I think Azerbaijan, along with the countries, embrace this energy basket approach.
And Azerbaijan also maintains growing energy and investment ties with Gulf and Asian partners. How diversified is Baku's energy diplomacy becoming?
Well, a lot. Masdar is doing a big project in Azerbaijan. It's China as well. If you look at the recent figures, the middle corridor, the cargo going from there has increased about 80-90%. Many of them came from China, and then it is moving. But it is also becoming a connector for the world between Europe and Asia. It's also working with the Gulf, I just mentioned, China, Gulf, Saudi Arabia as well. So they have lots of partners, and I think they're managing and balancing the diplomatically really well so far.
Okay, Osama, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate your analysis.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all the latest developments.